I laughed when the papers were handed to me. Not because they were funny, but because I hadn't stood upright in 4 months. A titanium rod had fused my spine together, pinning me to a hospital bed while my body relearned how to exist. My hands shook as I read the heading: Notice of Legal Action, Harassment, Stalking. My ex-wife, Patricia, was suing me. According to the filing, I had followed her across Ontario, outside her office in Ottawa, near her sister's cottage in Muskoka, even lingering near her physiotherapy clinic in Kingston. The dates were neatly listed: March to June 2024. Those same months, I had been confined to the 7th floor of Toronto General Hospital, unable to walk more than a few steps without collapsing. My name is Robert Harrison. I'm 63 years old. And until that envelope landed in my lap, I believed the worst chapter of my life was already behind me. 3 years earlier, my construction company had imploded when our biggest client went bankrupt, owing us $840,000. One failure triggered another. The business vanished, then the house in Oakville, then my 28-year marriage. Stress crushed what remained. By last winter, my vertebrae were so compressed I could barely stand. Surgery wasn't optional, it was survival. Spinal fusion, months of recovery, constant monitoring. That's what made the lawsuit feel surreal. On every single date Patricia claimed I was stalking her, I had been under hospital supervision, tracked, logged, watched. My surgeon had been explicit: 12 weeks before stairs, 16 weeks before driving. The lawsuit arrived in week 17. I called my lawyer, Graham Chen, immediately. He'd handled my bankruptcy and divorce. He knew how ugly things had become. When I read him the allegations, he went quiet. "Robert," he finally said, "this is actually good news." Good news? I was being accused of criminal harassment. "You have airtight proof," he explained. "Hospital records, nurse logs, security footage. You couldn't have done this. This gets dismissed fast." I wanted to believe him, but Graham hadn't seen what I had. Inside the envelope were 12 photographs, printed in color. In every one of them, a man stood in the background. My height, my build, my receding gray hairline. Wire-rimmed glasses identical to the ones I'd worn for 15 years. In one photo outside a Starbucks in Ottawa, he was even wearing a navy windbreaker, one I owned. "She has pictures," I said quietly. "Someone who looks exactly like me." Another pause. "Email them," Graham replied. "We'll handle it. Meanwhile, document everything." So I did. I combed through months of phone records, messages, emails. My daughter Amy visited twice a week. My son flew in once from Vancouver. My brother came every Sunday. Beyond that, my world had consisted of nurses, physiotherapists, and the elderly man in the next bed who watched game shows at full volume. The lawsuit demanded $200,000 for emotional distress and a restraining order. The court date was set for August 15th, filed in Ottawa, 3 hours away. Even sitting that long felt impossible. That night, sleep never came. Not because of pain, but because something felt deeply wrong. Patricia and I had fought, bitterly. The collapse of the business poisoned everything. She blamed me for trusting the wrong people, for losing the life she'd grown used to. But stalking? That wasn't me. It had never been me. I studied the photos again, magnifying every detail. The resemblance was terrifying, but one thing didn't match: the man's posture. His shoulders slouched forward. After months of rehab, I'd been trained to stand straight, rigid, protective of my spine. Whoever this was, he didn't move like me. And for the first time, a thought crept in that made my stomach tighten. If it wasn't me in those photos, then who was it? The next morning, I called Toronto General's records department. It took 3 days and $200 in administrative fees, worth every cent. What I received was a brick of truth, 416 pages documenting every minute of my life from February to June. Admission, February 12th, 6 a.m. Surgery, 9 hours. Post-op complications, infection, ICU, extended monitoring. Transfer to recovery, February 28th. Discharge, June 8th. 117 days. The nursing logs were relentless in their detail. Every 4 hours, vital signs. Every medication recorded. Every meal noted. For the first 3 weeks, I was on morphine drip. For 6 weeks, I couldn't walk to the bathroom without help. I didn't even leave my hospital floor until week 14 when they wheeled me down for a CT scan. I sent everything to Graham. He reviewed it and scheduled a call with Patricia's lawyer. Her name was Judith Brennan. I listened on speaker as Graham calmly laid out our position. Miss Brennan, my client was hospitalized during every date in your complaint. We have comprehensive medical documentation proving he was physically incapable of being in Ottawa, Muskoka, or Kingston. Judith didn't hesitate. Mr. Chen, we have photographic evidence and eyewitness testimony. 6 individuals confirmed seeing Mr. Harrison at these locations. 6 people identified someone who resembled my client, Graham replied. There's a difference. The photographs are quite clear, Judith said coolly. And I should also mention there were concerning phone calls made to my client during this period from Mr. Harrison's number. My stomach dropped. I had called Patricia twice in 4 months, once before surgery, once after, just to tell her I'd survived. Both calls under 2 minutes. What calls? I asked, breaking my silence. Mr. Harrison, Judith replied, her voice edged with sarcasm. Lovely to hear from you. My client received 17 calls from your number between March and June. She wisely didn't answer. Your voicemails were unsettling. That's impossible, I said. Check the records. We have, she replied. They tell a different story. The call ended. Graham didn't speak right away. We need your phone records, he said finally, immediately, and we need to find out who this lookalike is. I believe me, I said, that I didn't make those calls. I believe the hospital records, but someone worked very hard to make this look like you. This isn't random, it's targeted. That afternoon, I requested my records from Rogers. While waiting, I started thinking about who might want to destroy me. The bankruptcy had left scars, subcontractors unpaid, suppliers burned, employees laid off. But that was 3 years ago. Why now? Why through Patricia? Then I remembered something. During one of Amy's visits in April, she'd mentioned Patricia had a new boyfriend, someone she'd met right before my surgery. She seems happy, Amy had said. Happier than she's been in years. What's his name? I asked. Dennis something. Dennis Maxwell. I searched him online. Ottawa, nothing. Toronto, still nothing. Then another thought hit me. What if she hadn't met him on book club? What if it was online? I logged into Facebook for the first time in months and scrolled through Patricia's friends. There he was, Dennis Maxwell. Late 50s, graying hair, slim build, standing beside a canal in his profile picture. I clicked through his photos. My blood went cold. Dennis Maxwell looked like he could be my brother. Not identical, but close enough. Same height, same face shape, same style of glasses, same thinning hairline, worn the same way. I took screenshots and sent them immediately to Graham, then called him. Tell me I'm not crazy, I said. Look at this man. A pause. That's concerning, Graham said. Very concerning. Where did you find him? He's Patricia's new boyfriend. She met him right before my surgery. Another pause. This might not be a coincidence, Graham said carefully, but we can't accuse anyone without proof. Do you know anything else about him? Just his name and that he lives in Ottawa. I'll dig, Graham replied. Your phone records should arrive tomorrow. That'll tell us a lot. They arrived the next morning. 68 pages. I printed them all, went through them line by line. The 17 calls Judith mentioned, they weren't there. And that's when I knew this wasn't just a lawsuit anymore. Someone was rewriting reality. Rogers confirmed it in black and white. I had called Patricia exactly twice. March 3rd, 2:47 p.m., 1 minute, 43 seconds. March 4th, 9:12 a.m., 2 minutes, 6 seconds. Nothing else. No 17 calls. No disturbing voicemails. I called Graham immediately. "They don't exist," I said. "The calls she claims, I didn't make them." Graham exhaled slowly. "Then your number was spoofed," he said. "Someone made calls that looked like they came from you." "That's possible?" "Very, and easier to prove than people think. Cell tower records will show where those calls originated. If you were in a hospital bed and the signal came from Ottawa, this falls apart." "Why would someone do this?" I asked. "Why go this far?" "That," Graham said, "is the real question." He paused. "I have a friend, private investigator, former RCMP, Marcus Webb. I think it's time we bring him in." Marcus Webb met me at a Tim Hortons near my apartment 2 days later. He was big, mid-50s, broad shoulders, but moved carefully like a man who'd learned caution the hard way. I showed him everything: the lawsuit, the photographs, Dennis Maxwell's Facebook profile, my hospital records, my phone logs. He studied the photos in silence, pulling out a jeweler's loupe, examining shadows and angles. "This is sophisticated," he said finally. "These aren't casual snapshots. The framing, the lighting, whoever took these wanted usable images." "You think someone hired a photographer?" "I think someone planned this." I told him what little I knew about Dennis Maxwell. Marcus nodded and took notes. "I'll run a full background check." 3 days later, he called. "Dennis Maxwell doesn't exist." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean? I saw his Facebook page." "You saw a profile created 11 months ago. The profile picture is stock photography from a Toronto modeling agency. The rest are stolen from unrelated social accounts." "So, who is he?" "That's the interesting part." Marcus continued. "I contacted a few people in Ottawa, quietly. Patricia's been seen with a man named Kevin Dutton." My chest tightened. Age 58, 2 prior stalking charges in British Columbia, both settled out of court, moved to Ontario last year. I stared at the wall. "She's dating a stalker." "It appears so, but here's the twist. Dutton looks nothing like you. 5'7", heavy build, full head of dark hair." "Then how—" "He doesn't need to look like you," Marcus interrupted. "He just needs someone who does." The pieces shifted. Marcus leaned back. "Stalkers are obsessive, paranoid. They see threats everywhere. You're the ex-husband. In his mind, you're competition." "But I was bedridden." "Exactly," Marcus said. "You couldn't fight back, couldn't investigate, the perfect target. He probably assumed you'd settle, pay the money, and vanish from her life." "We have to tell Patricia," I said. "Not yet," Marcus replied. "If we warn him, he disappears. What we need is proof." "And how do we get that?" "I watch him. We wait for him to make another move." In the meantime, Graham filed our response. Hospital records, security footage, phone discrepancies. He also requested cell tower data for every alleged call. It rattled them. 2 days later, Judith Brennan requested a meeting. We met in Ottawa, in a glass tower overlooking the river. Patricia was there. She looked older, harder. Judith sat beside her, and, across the table, a man I'd never seen before. Shorter than me, heavy build, dark hair. Kevin Dutton. "This is my client's partner," Judith said. "He's been supporting her through this ordeal." My heart hammered. This was the man who had worn my face like a mask. Graham began laying out the evidence. Hospital admission logs, nursing records, video footage of me in recovery, phone records proving only 2 calls, the impossibility of a bedridden man appearing in 3 cities. Patricia's color drained. She kept glancing at Kevin. He kept playing the concerned boyfriend. "Ms. Brennan," Graham said evenly, "someone went to extraordinary lengths to frame my client. Someone who impersonated him, spoofed his phone number. This isn't mistaken identity. This is identity fraud and criminal harassment, but not by my client." "That's absurd," Judith said, though the confidence was gone. "Is it?" Graham replied. "We request forensic analysis of all parties." He turned slightly, "including Mr. Dutton." Kevin stiffened. I don't see why I should submit to anything. I'm not the one accused of stalking. No, I said, meeting his eyes for the first time, but you're the one who did it. And just for a fraction of a second, his mask slipped.
The room exploded. Judith demanded we retract the accusation. Patricia looked between Kevin and me, confused, terrified. Kevin shot to his feet, face flushed with rage. "I don't have to listen to this," he snapped. "Patricia, we're leaving." That's when the door opened. Marcus Webb stepped inside. He moved calmly, deliberately, and placed a thick folder on the table. "Kevin Dutton," Marcus said evenly, "also known as Kevin Marshall, also known as Dennis Maxwell." Kevin froze. "Wanted in British Columbia on 2 counts of aggravated stalking. Violated a restraining order in Vancouver last year." Marcus slid a photograph across the table. "Photographed 3 days ago entering a costume shop in Ottawa." Patricia gasped. "Purchased a gray wig, wire-rimmed glasses." Kevin bolted, but Marcus was faster. In 3 strides, Kevin was slammed against the glass wall, arm twisted behind his back. Through the transparent conference room, I saw 2 Ottawa police officers rushing in. Patricia cried out. Kevin shouted as he was cuffed. "She didn't know. Patricia had nothing to do with this. I was protecting her from him." I stood slowly. "I was in a hospital bed," I said quietly, "for 4 months." Kevin didn't look at me as they dragged him away. The full story unraveled over the following weeks. Kevin Dutton had created the Dennis Maxwell persona to get close to Patricia. He'd researched her divorce, studied her interests, shaped himself into exactly the man she would trust after 28 years with me. Stable, attentive, safe. But Kevin was obsessive, pathologically jealous of anyone from their target's past. He'd done this before. In British Columbia, he'd harassed one woman's ex-boyfriend so relentlessly, using spoofed messages and false accusations, that the man had attempted suicide. When Kevin learned I was hospitalized, he saw the perfect opening. Frame me as a stalker while I was physically helpless. Destroy any chance of reconciliation. Erase me from Patricia's life forever. He hired a photographer from Vancouver, someone who owed him money. The man wore a wig, glasses, clothes like mine. They coordinated everything through encrypted apps. The phone calls were easier. Online services let you spoof any number. Kevin used mine to leave increasingly disturbing voicemails, playing the role of the obsessed ex-husband. Patricia saved every one. At Kevin's apartment, police found a wall covered in photographs, hundreds of them. Patricia walking, Patricia shopping, Patricia entering her building, surveillance notes, schedules, favorite places. He'd been stalking her long before he introduced himself at book club. The charges stacked fast. Identity theft, criminal harassment, fraud, violation of restraining orders. Bail was set to $100,000. He couldn't pay it. 3 weeks later, Patricia came to see me. I was finishing physiotherapy, slowly learning how to trust my body again when I saw her waiting. We sat in a quiet corner of the clinic. "I'm dropping the lawsuit, obviously." Then her voice broke. "I'm sorry, Robert. I should have known. You're not that kind of person." She wiped her eyes. "But the photos, the calls, it all felt so real. He knew exactly what to say, exactly what I needed to hear." She cried. And despite everything, I felt sorry for her. She'd been manipulated too, maybe worse than I had. "This wasn't your fault," I said softly. And for the first time in months, the truth finally had room to breathe.
"He's done this before." That's what the police told Patricia. He wasn't impulsive, he wasn't careless, he was methodical. They explained that Kevin had been watching her for months before she ever met him, studying her routines, her fears, her past, learning exactly how to become someone she would trust. She shook her head when she told me.
That's what makes it so violating, she said, knowing it was all planned. We talked for over an hour that day. Really talked, for the first time in years. She told me about the fear, how unsafe she'd felt in her own city, how the idea of being watched had slowly consumed her. I told her about the betrayal, lying helpless in a hospital bed while my name was being dismantled piece by piece, accused of something I physically couldn't have done. "What's going to happen to him?" she asked quietly. "Prison," I said. "Graham thinks 8 to 10 years. She nodded. "Good. People need to be protected from people like that." The lawsuit was officially dropped in September. Graham filed a countersuit against Kevin for defamation, identity theft, and emotional distress. We'll probably never see a dollar from it, but that wasn't the point. It's on his record. Patricia moved temporarily to her sister's cottage in Muskoka. She needed distance from Ottawa, from the memories, from everything. We text occasionally now, nothing heavy, just checking in. The marriage is over. It will stay that way, but we're not enemies anymore. We survived something together, even if we didn't know it at the time. My back is improving, slowly. I can walk about 40 minutes a day now, enough to start thinking about what comes next. Maybe teaching construction management, passing on what I know without destroying what's left of my spine. At 63, rebuilding isn't easy, but it's possible. This whole experience taught me something I wish I'd understood earlier in life. When someone tries to destroy your reputation, truth doesn't always win immediately, but it is the most powerful weapon you have. Documentation matters. Evidence matters. Facts matter. Patricia believed Kevin because what he gave her felt true, but feeling true isn't the same as being true. I also learned something else. Predators rely on isolation, on weakness, on moments when you can't fight back. Kevin chose me because I was in a hospital bed, because he thought I was powerless. What he didn't expect was that even from that bed, I could still gather evidence, still build a defense, still find people like Graham and Marcus who believed in the truth. This is something I tell younger people now whenever I get the chance. Technology can be weaponized against you. Phone numbers can be spoofed, photos can be manipulated, identities can be stolen. But that same technology leaves trails. Cell towers, timestamps, security footage, digital records that don't lie. In my case, hospital monitoring systems, phone logs, and cameras saved my life and my name. The digital age makes certain lies easier to spread, but it also makes the truth harder to erase. I'm still healing, still processing, still rebuilding, but I'm here. My name is clear, Patricia is safe, and Kevin Dutton is facing justice. Sometimes the system works, but only if you fight, only if you document everything, only if you refuse to accept lies, no matter how convincing they sound. Because truth has a weight to it, and lies can't carry that weight forever. You just have to be strong enough to hold on, until the scales finally tip. And that titanium rod in my spine, it's a permanent reminder that even when life breaks you down completely, with enough support, enough time, and enough truth, you can still stand again.